All right, welcome back to Choosing Us. We have some special guests today that I am so excited about, and we are going to let them give us a little intro into them. But welcome to Choosing Us, Matt and Bonnie.
Thank you so much. I'll let you go first.
Hi, guys. Yeah, I'm Bonnie Schroeder. This is my incredible husband, Matt Vincent. We're really, really excited to be on this podcast today, share a little bit about ourselves, a little bit about what works for us as a couple, how we've grown our relationship, how our relationship has changed over the years. And it has been quite a journey together.
Yeah.
And like Michaela mentioned, we might not be the most traditional, quote unquote, couple, if you will, but still think that, we've had quite a ride together and have found a lot of success in our relationship and how we navigate it. And we're really happy to be here.
Yeah.
I love that.
I feel the same. I'm lucky enough to have Bonnie as a lovely partner. I'm Matt Vincent. I've done a lot of things throughout the course of my existence. And at this point, I'm really focused on trying to become the best version of me.
Mm-hmm.
And having a partner that's alongside on her journey, trying to become the best version of her, gives a lot of room for us to really embrace that and explore how do we communicate deeper and do these other things. The area of expertise that I came from was this athletic background, formerly becoming a world champion, and being able to use that to decide what was the mindset that allowed me to constantly make progress, and how do I apply that to where we want to go and where we want to be in our relationship.
I love that. And I love what you said about you are trying to become the best self for you while she's doing the same. It's not you are trying to make each other better. It's that you are becoming better individually, which in turn makes the relationship even better.
Yeah. We've been together for almost 6 years. And prior to this, I was married for 13. And it didn't work out. And what I thought I wanted in life wasn't what I wanted anymore. And as we came into this relationship, I could see so many of those old habits, like wanting to pop back up of where I'm comfortable. And then it was nice to be able to take a step back and remind myself that, like, you fell in love with her, which didn't have any input from you. I didn't make the thing I fell in love with. I fell in love with what she chose and how she chose to be and her decisions. So I'm going to try to keep my hands off. I'm just going to be a fan and trust that she's going to do the best for her, and I'll try to do the same. She doesn't need my help.
And keep in mind, we got together in my early 30s, his late 30s. So you're already so established as a human being, right? You've had past relationships, you've had a lot of life experiences. And it really boils down to what we like to say is, like, I trust Matt is doing the best for Matt. I trust Bonnie is doing the best for Bonnie, right? Neither of us need each other. It's only just a support factor, right? We raise each other up. We're side by side. No one's leading, no one's front or back. This is truly a partnership, teammates. And again, trusting that you're being the best for you, I'm being the best for me. And if we're doing that for ourselves, that's only going to add and help the relationship grow as its own kind of third entity here, right? Us as individuals, and then the relationship container that we've created.
I love that. I feel like that was the best information so far, and of the whole thing. We could stop it right there.
Excellent.
That perspective is amazing.
It
10-minute
truly
podcast.
is. Yeah. Right. Because most people do not have that idea going into a relationship. I feel like they become so codependent that they rely on each other. And then there becomes that issue of who's wearing the pants in the relationship and who's the one in charge and making all the choices. And then you get this control factor where there becomes all these issues in the relationship, where you guys completely took that out and said, I'm going to do me, you do you, and let's do life together. Mm-hmm. And how cool that is, because that's normal for you guys. But for most of the world, that's just a foreign concept that they haven't even thought about, that, wow, I can actually do me, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. And that's huge. So that's awesome that you guys do that.
Well, one of the things that we coach, and we're having our first couples retreat next year in February and going to be
Let's
hosting
go.
another one later in the year. We keep it to 5 couples. I think we have one spot open for February. If anyone watching is interested,
We will share the link.
Shoot a
Yes.
direct message. One of the most impactful things in my life was really reading and applying the 4 agreements. I'm not sure if you've read it, but like
Very
that
much so.
was very, very impactful for me, of a different lens to kind of view the world through. And so that's really this base foundation that we set up for our relationship as well, including how we speak to ourselves. Are we being impeccable? You know, are we bickering? Are we doing something to be seen instead of explain what's going on?
And a partner is also an accountability partner, right? So I know that one that I slip into every now and then is making assumptions. And I've brought things to Matt before, and he doesn't react in the way that I expected, which is an assumption, right? And then he's able to say, did you assume I was going to say this or I was going to do X? And I'm like, shoot, like I know I just broke an agreement there and he called me out on it, but I can choose also to operate by the agreement of not taking it personally, not taking offense, and being like, oh, yo, my partner is my accountability partner too. They should be able to call me out in moments like that where I'm not maybe showing up as my best self in this situation. And, you know, we preach the 4 agreements pretty heavily with our coaching group, and just choosing to live your life in alignment with these agreements. And so many people are like, yeah, I do. I'm thinking about it. I'm focused on it. And then I say, okay, how about using the agreements in your relationship? How about using the agreements in the bedroom? There's an idea. Are you doing your best? Are you taking things personally? Are you making assumptions? All these things can be utilized there in a really, really effective and simple manner. And as soon as we present that to some people, they're like, oh my gosh, whoa, that changes everything. Am I speaking up about what I want in the relationship because he can't read my mind?
Being impeccable with your word, right? Like,
right.
Yep.
Am I speaking up about what I want? Am I assuming he wants something done this way or that way? And that's in the relationship container. That's in the bedroom, which falls in that, of course. But it's really interesting once you start diving a little bit further and being like, yeah, I'm doing all this out here in the real world, but what about at home? And what about under the covers at night? Am I agreeing to all those as well? So it's a really, really interesting concept that we like to use 100% of the time. Yeah. And like I said, we'll call each other out when we are not in alignment with those things.
I love that you guys call each other out. So many people don't do that.
Well, so if we're going to operate from the 4 agreements, right, that I don't take anything personal, then that means she's not being shitty to me.
Yep.
And if I'm being impeccable with my word, it's not coming from a shitty place. Right. So
if we trust each other to operate by these agreements, then I don't take offense by what she has to say. If I take offense, that's on me. That's my own insecurity and probably thing I should look at. My own shadow of saying, like, whoa, validation.
Well, and we live in that world right now where so many people take everything personally. It's all a personal attack, right? And so you talk about your previous relationship and then going into this relationship and not bringing that same stuff with you. What was that step like? What advice would you give to someone who's maybe just gotten out of a bad relationship? They have all of these things that are attached to that and wanting to change, wanting to not take things personally, to be more accountable for themselves. What would that step look like?
So I guess, like, let me speak really specifically to a point. Like, if you're in the ends of what a long-term relationship, a marriage, whatever it is, it's the fucking worst. It's so brutal and just dragging on you every day. And then there's these still little fleeting moments that are like, I'll stay on. And I remember very specifically when things were at its worst, and at its worst for me. And having that conversation with myself about, like, this is why we're not going to fucking stomach it anymore. And then all those times when you're in that mode, finding yourself daydreaming about what I would do if I didn't have this, like what the other life looks like. And if you're out of that relationship and not sure what to do, like fucking reconnect with that voice that said, if I could do this, I would. The chains are off. Go. Why do you continue to hold yourself back in any way? Like, if there's going to be this moment of reset in your life of what I was supposed to do, I did all these things I was supposed to do. And maybe that helps you learn how to be successful and figure out a relationship and communicate. But that also gets you to the point in life where you get to say, what do I want to do? Who do I want to be? Because nothing's more valuable than anything else. So what do you choose? Who do you choose? And then how do you follow up with the actions to keep choosing it?
I think it's also important to note, like, your relationship was not necessarily bad.
No, it wasn't.
But I think that can be even more challenging, obviously, to leave.
Yeah, it would have been really easy to settle and just stay good enough's okay. I don't want good enough.
That's exactly what I was going to say. You don't want good enough. You're
Not
following
in any area of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think what's important, like getting out of any type of relationship, quote unquote, good or bad or not good enough, whatever, is you have to be willing to unlearn things. You have to be willing to create space for whatever is next, right? Because you can't receive if there's no space to receive. And it can be really easy getting out of a negative relationship because you know something that you don't want. Okay, my last relationship prior to Matt was unhealthy and very emotionally abusive and all these things that I recognized. But there was still a lot of things that I had to unlearn and relearn. One of those really being communication, how to effectively communicate with a partner and not shut down for fear of things escalating or my partner becoming aggressive in whatever way. So I really had to consciously and intentionally be open to relearning this skill or learning things in the first place that maybe I had never learned to begin with. And doing that with someone new and trusting in him and trusting in the relationship container that we created, that it's okay. It's all okay. Anything I bring to him is never going to be met with resentment or hostility. It's all safe. So really defining the parameters of this new relationship and being able to say, okay, here's what I had. Here's what I did in the past. That has absolutely nothing to do with what I'm choosing to do and how I'm choosing to behave going forward. Okay, maybe there's some bits and pieces that are helpful, that are actually useful, but this is its own new thing and has to be treated as such.
I love that. And talking about resolving those things and creating the space, right? You have, as you said, you have to create the space for new things to blossom. But just as we know, when you create a space and there's not intentionality and purpose, vacuums tend to pull in a lot of garbage. Mm-hmm. And having that intention behind what you did is amazing.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest or most significant ways that we can create space or unblock things, if you will, is through forgiveness. So forgiving our past partners, forgiving ourselves for actions, things we may have said, like that's how we truly are able to move on and create space for what's next.
Yes, 100%. I feel like it's hard at the beginning to let go of that. You tend to make that your identity. It becomes so much of part of your identity that you have to shed that. You have to remove that identity and be willing to create something new. Be willing to step into the unknown and be okay with that. And that comes with every part of your life and being able to have change and make change. It's not easy, but it's always worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. And as two people that have been past athletes, we can 100% relate to the shedding of old identities that no longer serve you. And Matt kind of had to go through that a little bit before we got together, but it's still an ongoing process. And
of course.
I have been navigating that, continuously and still a little bit throughout our current relationship, just saying goodbye to past identities that are just simply no longer a fit with who we are at 37 and at 41. And it's never easy and it's always uncomfortable, and it has to be, right? Because the things that you were are going to be too uncomfortable to stay, to keep. Like, they can't come forward with you. So like you said, Michaela, we have to be open to the unknown. And even more than that, we have to challenge ourselves to be excited about the unknown and be excited about the truly limitless potential and limitless possibilities that are out there. And that one can absolutely be a challenge, but it's a good challenge to place on yourself.
You know, those those identities we attach to kind of in that first act of life. Like where we're really trying to set the parameters on who we are, what we do. This is me. I have this job, like all these ideas of who I am. What I've kind of come to experience, at least for me, is they're all temporary. Like all of them. I was a student. I was an athlete. I run a business. I've done all these things. And all of those chapters, no matter what, are probably going to exist sometime less than I do. So they're temporary anyway. And just embracing that change is part of how this is supposed to work. And I want the ability to as frictionlessly move from chapter to chapter in my life with the best intention and thank what was. You know, how often we look at this idea, right? That like if you go back and change one thing, like the whole world changes 10 years down the road, right? Well, you're at the moment right now that affects 10 years down the road. Like what's the little action that you want to do to set that person up? Yeah, I'm not driving forward in my life with the rear view mirror. It's all places I've already been and done. I've got the lessons and experiences and I've implemented those things, and now that's what wisdom becomes. Otherwise, you just live as a tourist trying to collect these things to show other people you did.
Yeah. Well, and in the process of creating these new habits, it's awesome that you guys are able to have grace for each other through that process of obviously none of us are perfect. And sometimes you do take a few steps back before you take a few steps forward, and just being able to support each other and recognize that we're not perfect, but that we're always trying. We're always putting in the effort to be better, even though, no, we're not perfect.
You know, that idea of perfection, right? Like we can see whether it's weather patterns or what our financial income looks like. Like, I don't know anyone, whether it's been strength training or anything, there isn't any direct linear line of success. You know what I mean? Like everything's got these ups and downs. It's got the valleys and the peaks. It's the gap between the saw teeth isn't less valuable than the teeth. If you don't have the gap, you don't have the teeth. So you need both. Both of those ups and downs are part of the journey. And long enough term, being able to kind of embrace the flow of it instead of constantly trying to be this rigid thing that wants it all to stay still, when in fact, like our energy, our vibration, our emotions, like everything comes in waves, and we're desperately so hard want to lock it down to this fixed point. We're wiggly as shit, man. Like embrace how fucking wiggly that changes instead of trying to lock it into this tight idea and control it.
And that's the same for relationships, right? And how you choose to operate in the relationships. How long have you guys been together?
11 years.
Okay, 11 years. So you probably have very different agreements to your relationship than you did when you were in your 20s, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and it's easy to get locked in on the ideas of how we handle things, especially if we get together at a young age. That's going to look very different than how we handle disagreements or whatever that may be when we're 40 plus. So there has to be that same fluidity and allowing room for change, being wiggly, allowing room for wiggles and change as you grow, as you develop as a person. And like Michaela said, allowing yourself grace, giving your partner grace as you navigate that journey together, because it is this dynamic, constantly changing thing that you have to be willing to put effort into and willing to be able to take a step back out of it for a second and look at it and say, okay, this is the way we've been handling things, and maybe that no longer works for who we are now. Time to change things up.
I'm still pondering one on the wiggly. And
well, especially if we want to break that away all the way down to like vibration, right? So look at who Brad is on an atomic level. You're all vibration.
That's it.
Yeah.
The whole thing's wiggly, man. Nothing's stagnant.
Definitely. And then you've got the sawtooth that I've been pondering. I've never thought about a saw blade, but you have the peaks, right? And the peaks form the new, whereas the troughs shed away or pull away what was there, simultaneously forming and removing at the same time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We so often we don't want to let go of the past or form into the new, because you've mentioned the comfort zone. We tend to call the comfort zone the familiar zone, because I beg to differ. It is not comfortable at all.
Ooh.
Most of us want to
the
leave
lie
that
of
zone.
it is, right? Like the just lie of staying the same, the lie of listening to the ego that wants you to stay the same simply because it kept you alive this long. Like it doesn't fucking know any better. It just knows change is dangerous.
Yep.
But real danger we don't really have an issue with anymore. So it's just discomfort. Probably the biggest takeaway I can give to anyone listening, and one of the things I teach and really start helping my clients with to shift on how to change habits, is like the first step is being able to have awareness that I'm doing a thing, right? So like if I catch myself spiraling up, eating like an asshole, being mean to myself, dropping into scarcity, any of that, I just have to take awareness that I'm doing it and that it's my choice. I don't need to judge it. I just need to have awareness that it's happening, right? And if I can catch it, that's where the real change happens, is being able to shift into the abundance and being able to talk to yourself out loud and reaffirm, thank you for catching it sooner. Thanks for spending less time in this problem than we have in the past. Thanks for choosing to be different. Thanks for creating the life we want instead of who we've been. Thanks for noticing that we can change. Thanks for trusting in us that if we stay consistent and notice this, we'll make the difference. Right? So you start talking to yourself out of abundance for every time that you make a mistake. And so when you're talking about perfection, for me, the timeline I'm interested in is from today until I'm dead. So I'm not going to be perfect. So I can go ahead and take that one off the table and not really worry about it. So the biggest difference to how to make progress then is, how do I not waste any time after a fuck up? How do I get back on my course? How do I learn from the mistake? Where was I challenged and I let it slip through? Not with judgment, but with love for who I want to be.
Yeah.
That is so much to unpack.
Love all of it. That was amazing. Well, now everybody knows they need to come to your couples retreat, and then they're going to get even more from that. I think we need to sneak off to one of those soon.
Come out. We got a spot in February if you want to come.
Sweet. I want to dive in a little bit more to some of the things that you guys have been through. I know that you've been through some crazy trials in your 6 years, right?
Yep.
6 years together. You had some surgeries, you had some things like that come up. You guys have traveled a ton. You have lost a parent, as I recall. You guys have been through a lot together in your 6 years. What has been something that through those trials have really helped you?
I'll let you go, or I can.
Go ahead.
There's a lot there.
There's a lot there. I'm trying to figure out where I want to start.
It's perspective. I think at the end of the day that I get to be the one that chooses my perspective on whatever the events are. And with controlling that, I'm the one who gets to see the abundance in whatever it is. And so no matter what the hard day is, no matter what the challenge is, it's understanding that I chose this path to get to it. That maybe that challenge in front of me, this miscommunication, whatever it is my next chance to sharpen that axe and prove that I am who I want to be. That's your next opportunity. And through all of it, through no matter what it is, it's really being able to say, I chose this, not under conditional terms. I said I'm going this way, and I will continue to choose to go that way. I understand what's going to be the fight, but again, I'm so in love with her. I'm so in love with us. I'm so in love with getting to be with this person that I didn't think I would, that I never expected. And if I left good enough because I'm in love with trying to find great's hard. It's part of the ride. It's built in. We're not going to avoid it. So how do I embrace it?
It's amazing.
Bonnie, what's your thoughts?
More specifically to the things that you touched on there, the surgeries, the loss of a parent, those were all my things to experience in the time that we've been together. And I'm very, very blessed because Matt has a lot of life experience under his belt and unfortunately experiences with the same things. Matt has had 9 knee surgeries. I have now had 3 surgeries in the time that we've been together, and understanding what your partner needs from you in those times is very crucial. Understanding how to hold space, how to support, is everything. And Matt has said in the past that he's not the best nurse, and how amazing that he can say that out loud. I can receive that, not take offense. And if I need extra help, I can find extra help. He's amazing in a lot of other ways, and that's not one that he feels he's very good at. Great. If that's the case, cool. We can make other plans. But I think you're better than you maybe think you are. You still...
Yes. I mean, but also I do think being honest up front about it.
Yeah,
that,
of course.
If you think I'm going to be intuitive and be able to figure out what it is you need in this time, I ain't the guy. I need you to yell at me.
Of course. But more so like mindset during recovery from surgeries. How getting back to baseline is going to go, what that process is going to feel like, how to handle recovery and rehabilitation in the gym. And maybe these thoughts that are going to come through your mind, he's all had them, he's all felt them. So it's been a blessing to share that journey with someone who's been there, who's had that experience. And the same goes for loss of a parent. There's nothing that anyone can do or say in those situations that is going to make things less horrible, less traumatic, that is going to ease some of the grief and guilt you may be left with after losing a parent. He lost his dad when he was 31. I lost my mom 2 years ago. And there were so many times where just nothing needed to be said. I just simply needed him to be there. I needed him to be there and hold space in a way that only he can. I just needed his presence. I just needed him around. There was nothing that he was going to be able to say that would change how I felt in the moment, nor did that needed to be changed. I just needed to feel. I just needed to process and grieve on my own terms. And he was absolutely amazing in that time. And that's not just like a one and done, check that box, we're healed, moving on from that. It still comes up for me. It still comes up for him 10 years later. And we make sure that we hold space for each other how we need it. And it's so important to recognize when your partner just needs the space and maybe not a lot of words, or maybe they are looking for a fix. And that's one thing that we always come back to, because Matt is such a fixer. And sometimes I just want to vent or just want the space held. So setting the tone for conversations like that is really important. If I bring something to him, he can say, okay, do you want my help? Do you want to fix? Or do you just need a sounding board? Because no matter what you need, no matter what you need, I can be either. And it's such a masculine, energy thing to want to fix, to want to solve that problem, when really that's not what we need all the time. Sometimes we just want to be heard. We just want to be seen. We just want to get our problems, our stresses, our frustrations out of our heads, vocalize them, put them out, and have someone hear it. There's such a power in just knowing that you were fully seen and fully heard in all of your raw, uncomfortable vulnerability, no matter what that situation is. And the same thing with me coming to him. I learned early on that I am incredibly open to his energy. So no matter what he's feeling or has going on, I will just soak it up like a sponge. And I had to learn how to handle that early on, because if he was frustrated or down,
I swing wildly,
or dealing with something, I would swing with him, but I would stay down low energetically longer, whereas he's already back up. And I'm like, hang on, how did this even happen? So now what we do is, when he's maybe in a funk, is I will say, okay, is this anything to do with us? No. Okay. Is this anything I can help with or do something to help in general? No. Okay. Then I know that I probably need to actually physically distance myself a little bit, give him some time to work through whatever he's got going on. And I know I won't soak it up the same way I would have in the past. But that's something you learn. That's something you learn with practice and trial and error, and being really open in your communication about what is going on, how you feel, how it's being handled, how not to take offense to the situation, and how you're going to move through it. And none of this is figured out on day one, right? You guys know, you've been together for over a decade. This is trial and error. This is learning who your partner is and understanding they might not be who they were 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago. and being able to, again, create whatever agreements or relationship container you want going forward, because there is no rules.
Yeah.
It's whatever agreements you choose to put on that. Our relationship might operate differently than your relationship, and that's fine. That's the beauty of it all. That's the beauty of choice. That's the beauty of being these autonomous, sovereign beings that get to choose. Back to what you were saying, everything is a choice. So it's important to remember that every single day when you wake up and choose this relationship.
Yeah. And I love what you were saying about going through grief and having him there. And we recently went through probably the most grief in our entire marriage. We actually just had a podcast episode come out on it that a few weeks ago I had a miscarriage.
Oh.
And that was like probably one of the hardest things we had been through, really,
I bet.
in the grief way. Thank you. But one thing we learned is that you have to be able to tell your partner what you want. And I know you addressed that a little bit on how they can't read your mind. He was like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to help you. I don't know how to be there for you, especially when you're physically going through a recovery as well.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're in the middle of that grief, being able to actually tell your partner what you need is hard. Mm-hmm. It's hard to be in it, be sad, be trying to process it yourself, and then trying to explain to your partner what you need when sometimes you don't even know what you need.
No, words are a really sloppy way to express feelings.
Yep.
Yes.
I know that, I think I kind of fall under all the love languages because I like them all. But I know that physical touch is up there for me. So I know that my baseline or my default setting as to like what I need, even if I can't express it, is just being around him. Just being in his presence, just being near him. We don't have to be talking. I just need to be near him. And I find so much strength and calming and groundedness from just being around him. So I know that even if I can't express myself, that's always a safe bet.
And I feel the same.
For him to go to, and vice versa.
And it's so good to talk about that, especially when you go through grief and then you kind of understand through that process what you're looking for from your partner and what you wish they would do and what you're trying to maybe just have them close, and then actually have those conversations of, this really helped me. This didn't help me very much. This was really important to me. That way, when you go through that grief again, because it's going to happen throughout life, that you've actually had those conversations and said, listen, when you did this, it really helped me. When you just laid there with me, when we just cuddled, you didn't have to say anything. That meant the world. And that's all I need.
And it builds awareness to just be able to put your eyes on it, right?
Yep.
Being able to admit it, being able to say, like, that's what I need.
That's exactly what we went through. Of Brad kept trying to like say things and do specific things, and I was like, okay, that's not working.
Nope, doesn't work.
I was like, just be here. Yep, my love language is physical touch. So I was like, I just want you to be here. I don't need you to say anything. I just need your presence. And that was it. And
hey, Brad, how are you through all that, man?
I'm doing well.
Okay.
It's been an interesting ride to go through all of that experience. It happened so fast. And we went to our ultrasound and then learned that we had an anembryotic pregnancy, which means the embryo was never formed, which means her body did exactly what it was supposed to do. It recognized there was a problem and it didn't form a fetus. Good job, body, right? Yeah. But then when the miscarriage actually started, she started hemorrhaging, and we ended up taking her to the ER. And I called my business partner, who's my brother, and I called my parents. And they later asked, I said, why did you just notify everybody as you're to the hospital? I said, we're going to, and I had to process this. We are on our way to a very routine thing with very capable doctors that can go very non-routine very quickly.
Yeah.
And we can go to this hospital and I can come home alone. I could take her there and then not bring her back with me. I knew that was a possibility.
Yeah, that's real.
I knew that we're both spiritual and religious. We define both of them. And I knew that all was going to be according to God's plan for us. And I just had to rely on that. And I had to rely on the fact that we got a lot of stuff to do and I can't do it alone.
Well, and look, the reason I ask, man, is I think that that situation's a really tricky one. And it's such a different experience for the male to go through because we don't have any of the physical damage.
Yep.
Right? Like we didn't host a thing. We weren't providing for it. We weren't. Yeah, it's just different.
Very.
And then feelings of not enough or how do I help or any of that, like the uselessness on the back end of it is really overwhelming.
Oh,
and so
100%. I sit there and say, what can I do? And she says, I don't know. And so I kind of just try different things. And the things that work, you stick, and the things that don't work, you ditch.
Well, and I mean, also, if we embrace that this is simply a valley, it'll pass. They all have. Nothing's been permanent.
Yep.
And so, like, just having space and trust in the plan, the universe, the whatever it is, that it's going to sort itself out. We don't have to force this thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know a lot of time whenever I catch myself in valleys, whether it's business and it's relationship or it's my own self with physical stuff or anything, that I catch myself like trying to make progress by like stepping on the accelerator as hard as possible and like pulling on the steering wheel and like doing that. Things don't go any faster doing that. Like you can use a toe and it's going to take just as long. One of them is just a miserable way to get there. So being able to have some grace and understand that the valleys are part of it, that these challenges are part of it, that this is part of our story, this is part of what we're writing.
It's not having that clenched death grip on the expectations of what we thought would be, right?
It's the expectation, right? Trials and tribulations and most grief comes because somebody had an expectation of something versus just being merely present.
Well, and you assume based on other people's experiences a little bit of how it's going to go.
Mm-hmm.
And there we are, making assumptions again.
Yeah. Instead of just embracing, like, what does parenthood look like for us? And this is part of that journey.
Yeah.
It's unique to you. It's yours.
Well, and
Like,
I feel like people try and get out of the valley as fast as they can, and then they miss what's right in front of them. They miss what they're supposed to learn through the valley because they're so focused on, I got to get out of here as fast as I can, that you miss
that's
the
the
purpose.
idea that there is a destination, right? That there is some point that you're going to reach where you don't suffer anymore.
It's not
like
a
where
place I
life
want to
doesn't
be.
kick your ass anymore. Like there's a point that like once I put that money in the bank, that'll be it. Once I hit that salary, that'll be it. It doesn't work.
Nope.
It doesn't work. What a complete waste of energy instead of just being able to embrace the ride. Like, what can I do the best today?
Well, and I love what you said about not staying for all the lessons that are there, right? Because there's wins and there's lessons. There's really no losses. So understanding that while you're in the valley, if you will, take a second to look around. Don't be in such a rush to leave. See what valuable takeaways and lessons there are to come back with, because you will get better at riding that wave. The more experience, the more regulated you are, the more just you have, the more in tune you are with yourself. You'll get better at riding those waves. But that isn't to say that there aren't incredible takeaways and lessons from the valleys. And I know that, you know, for all of us, for everyone, success is not a great teacher.
No, success is a terrible teacher.
No, terrible.
That's why I really struggle with the idea of like too much self-esteem being built into the importance of childhood with participation trophies.
I hate them.
Like we have to practice losing.
I hate
like
participation.
Like we have to practice anything we want to be good at. And I don't give a shit if like that's your attachment to being ADHD. Well, maybe you've never practiced actually trying to focus. Like, I think both skills are important. I think being able to multitask in the current world we live in is probably valuable. I think also being able to extremely focus on a thing that you're in love with is also really valuable. But if you convince yourself it's something you can't do, and you identify as that, and then you let that become this barrier that someone else said of why it keeps you from doing what you want to do, that's your choice too. Like, you're the prison guard. You're the one who doesn't want to learn the skill.
Absolutely. And Bonnie, you mentioned riding the wave. I think as humans, we so often want to make the wave. We sit there and try and force these waves to occur versus just ride the waves that are already there.
Yeah, absolutely. Or understanding that we are waves ourselves instead of like making them separate from us. Like, I am up and down. I am this full spectrum of human and the full spectrum of emotions that come with that. So even looking at yourself as the wave, or your nervous system or your state of regulation as the wave, and being able to tune into that when you need to and understand what you need to get back to where you were, or to get back to a state where you feel more, I don't like to say more in control, but more regulated, I guess, is the way of looking at it. And honoring those needs and giving yourself grace when it is time to take a second, pause, look around and see what needs to be adjusted.
Yeah. As we come to the end here, I would love for each of you to just share just one tip that you could give to our listeners of something they can do to reconnect if they just feel like their relationship is dull, or they're just not, maybe they're in the bottom of one of those valleys, maybe in their relationship. What's one tip that you can give them to help them?
I know what you were going to say earlier.
It's like, you do? I'm trying to think what I'm going to say.
I don't know what I'm going to say.
It was what we were talking about before we got on.
What was that? That was weeks ago.
No, we were joking. We were just like, everyone should be having more sex, but also not really a joke.
That's true.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's probably part of it, but also, like, good sex is a side effect of intimacy. Which means you have to be vulnerable, which means you have to be safe around each other, which means you have to trust each other, which means all those other things. Like, that's good sex is a side effect of that. Because you feel seen and loved and all those type of things, and you're willing to be known by your partner and embraced in all honesty of it, right? The authenticity. What would my tip be? If you don't like you, that's going to limit how much love you can ever feel from your partner. Because if you don't like you and you've built this thing to solely make that person love you, and you've created this identity around who you're supposed to be for you, for the family, for whoever it is, you're not only teaching inauthenticity to everyone around you, that you're not as important, but it also hits us the same way. Like, the amount of love that you can receive is directly in proportion to the amount that you feel for yourself and feel you deserve. And so many times we get stuck in that. And so if you don't know what to do, my suggestion is work on you. My suggestion is quit trying to change any external factors and pretend that it's something you're missing out externally, and realize the issue's here. That it's up to you to find it. It's up for you to change. And my recommendation is do that.
Absolutely. No notes on that. I think mine kind of hits on what we touched on earlier about the relationship being its own separate entity, and plays very well off of what Matt just said. If you're doing the best for you, and I know that my partner is doing the best for themselves, I know that this is going to in turn help the relationship grow and blossom. So I think always acting like there's three parts to this, always remembering that there's a me, a you, and our relationship. So stepping back from things and being able to look at it as like a 1 + 1 = 3 situation is really, really helpful for us. And I think that could be really helpful for a lot of people outside of the 4 agreements too. That one is obviously, we touched on that a lot today, but anytime you can reference that and hold your partner and yourself accountable to that, you'll be on the right track.
I mean, I know that I'm going to be great. I am going to take the actions and do those things. I know she is going to do that as well. So then that allows us to come together and create a bigger thing than we would have solo, because it amplifies. We're not trying to create one codependent life.
I love all that. So, in closing, where can our listeners, our guests, find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Bonschro, BONSCHRO.
I'm the Matt Vincent on Instagram. I have a few pages. Not Dead Yet _life is a coaching group and mentorship and everything that we work through in our community. Also Matt at mattvincent.net. If someone wants to get in touch with me, shoot me an email.
I love that. And you can find me on Instagram, Mr. Brad Draper.
And you'll find me at Choosing Us.
Like this thing, subscribe to it, download it for future listenings. Until next week, we love you guys. Bye.